Welcome to PolyCast, a civilization podcast focused on game strategy.
CanusAlbinus,
Makahlua,
TheMeInTeam,
Mega Bears fan.
Hello?
Hello.
Do you feel?
Whee! Oh, is it? I got assigned something without my knowledge. How dare. It's out of the way. Okay. Welcome to PolyCast episode 440. I'm TheMeInTeam, joined by CanusAlbinus,
I played in Turncast. It didn't go well.
Makahlua,
Oh man, I missed things. You'll have to tell us about that later.
and in absence, Mega Bears fan. Yeah, man, I didn't hear about this Turncast fun times either.
Okay, so I'll tell you about it right now before we get started. I joined a game with Dan Q and Warning You Two, and it was the first time I played actively in Turncast for quite a while. I ended up on I played as Mally, so I was not expecting to get a lot of hammers, but I ended up on a plain with a river and surrounded by mountains with a volcano right next to me. But unfortunately, my capital never got above Pop 2 because even with improvements, the best I could get was 2 farms with 2 food each. So I was stuck at Pop 2 for the entire game. At the same time, there were 3 barb camps that were equidistant in 3 different directions. So even though I built a bunch of warriors, they all got killed.
What about granary and trade routes? I mean, it'd slow you down, but you should be able to grow eventually.
Well,
Could you even get out a second city to put it in a better position?
I couldn't, no,
Oh,
because
wow.
there were so many barbs.
Oh, you got the position Steve usually. That's Warning You Two gets.
Yeah, it was a disaster, and I was somewhat disappointed by my performance, but then I had a connection issue, so I disconnected. But Warning You Two eventually said, yeah, that was one of the toughest starts I'd ever seen. So I didn't feel too bad after he said that.
Yeah, all of us have had evenings like that where we get stuck in the corner with the barbs, kind of a thing. Particularly Warning You Two all the time. But don't be discouraged. Jump back in again.
Yeah.
Oh, I will. I've been playing single player a lot, so it's just like, this is the most ridiculous thing that's ever happened in Turncast for me.
Yeah, listen, there are some times that my game in Turncast is absolutely just crap, but I stay in there because at least there's always the chatter and stuff going on that's interesting. It keeps me in here more than just the game. So
This reminds me of how both Canus and I got hosed down by EU4 in the series that we started recording, but then the other players quit. So
I remember us trying to do EU4 multiplayer one time, but oh my gosh, this was quite a while back when there weren't as many expansions. But even then, it trying to keep us all synchronized was oh my god.
it's pretty good now and has been for a number of years.
Oh,
But the
really?
reason
Wow.
the reason that Let's Play fell through is one of the patches changed the mechanics of culture conversion. Our run was centered on that, and a couple of the other players quit in frustration. So even though it was Canus and I who got screwed by the RNG, we would have continued, but we needed our other players to actually continue that in the same format. Otherwise,
you were gonna get eaten up by AI if you didn't have some help.
oh no
No?
way.
Okay.
He got canused, which is what coined the term, where he had a siege against a level 1 fort that took like,
1,500
it was like
days.
5 years, a 5-year siege on a level 1 fort.
Okay,
Yeah.
I would have to know how ridiculous that
Like
was.
that's spectacular. And like my young ruler that I paid design points for died like way earlier than anticipated and slowed down my monarch points to a crawl. But like I'd won my wars, I was in a stable position. It was just gonna be slow going for a bit because I got screwed by the RNG. I wouldn't make a build like that now. But that was before I'd done, I think, World Conquests and stuff. I wasn't as good back then, so neither was my build.
That was a really
we'd have had no trouble doing culture conversions with 4 of us.
that had a really good name too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then eventually, Paradox undid / reworked some of those changes, because like briefly you couldn't religious convert in territories at all, and they changed that to just like applying a small penalty to it. And since then, the feature creep has been so strong that it's easier to convert in territories for most religions than before that patch. Because of course, Paradox would do that. In fact, now it auto converts. There's a button you can click that just uses missionaries all the time, and for the most part, that's pretty helpful. It saves thousands of clicks across a game if you're trying to convert everything.
Oh, yeah, because you would have to do that and click this province. Click, yes. It's so clickety. Even with that saving, it's still clickety.
So yeah, maybe we can bring back that let's.
Oh, dear.
We can find people to do it. I'd be game.
Exact same players, totally. But yeah, I'd be game. I haven't done E4 Let's Play since our last one, so hey. But maybe we should. Maybe I should do real less here.
We should actually talk about Civ at some point. Yes, probably. Nintendo Direct was, when was it? Oh, yeah, it was recently. It was between the last two podcasts. I do not know the scale of time anymore.
I believe
Oh.
it was it was the week after we recorded the last
Okay.
2 episodes. So it was part of the Nintendo Direct's, what would you call it? Like their third-party showcase.
Ah, okay. And there's only like a short, about minute-long clip that was Civ 7. Not too much new information, except unsurprisingly, Japan is one of the other Civs that's going to be in there, and represented by Himiko, who apparently her strength is going to be friendship. And it does say later on in the trailer that in the modern era, you can play as the Meiji Empire. We don't know what Japan looks like if they're in the first 2 years as well, but you can be, I believe, be her and be in the Meiji era. At least that's how it looks. And they did have one screenshot where, because they showed the first one where she's just saying hello, and I couldn't tell if she just had a lot of a makeup type thing on, or she didn't seem like she looked as good as some of the other leaders we've seen. And she also had her talking to Ben Franklin at one point, and he looked a bit different too. So I don't know if that's just graphics on the Switch or if there's anything that's been changed.
It looked like some of the shaders were a little bit messed up.
Yeah, something didn't seem quite right about her appearance when the first thing when she was saying hello, but when she was talking to Ben Franklin, she seemed fine. So
Yeah.
But we will be playing as Japan, and we have a female leader for Japan, which is great. I don't know if we'll have other Japanese leaders yet, but because 1 minute is not enough to tell you much new things. We also didn't see if there was a unique unit or anything like that. Everything else looked fairly familiar, and they were also emphasizing that you could play with your friends either locally or online. So I guess you could sit there with 2 people on a Switch and I'm gonna get you, which is kind of fun actually.
Wonder if it's cross-platform multiplayer.
Yeah, well, given
Nice, that worked.
Yeah, I had the impression it was supposed to include the Switch people, but I don't know. That's not been properly confirmed.
I have a feeling that it may or may not work as well as we think it might.
Yeah, getting the other consoles integrated in with the PC play is one thing, but Switch is its own little thing. So I don't know.
Now,
Well-
I wouldn't say I would think it would work until I see it work, because multiplayer on release has not been a Firaxis specialty, and apparently it's pretty hard for a lot of other games too. Although others manage cross-platform just fine, so depends. But I mean, clearly it's not easy because it's not like only Firaxis or only Paradox or only whatever. Like, there's a subset of companies that release very stable multiplayer environments immediately on release, and there's others where they flop like a fish for a while until they get it right, and some never get it right.
We have our next topic here. It is the PAX West developer panel that happened on August 31st of 2024, for those of you who might be listening in the future. It was quite an interesting affair. I didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing, but it did give us some pretty good ideas about things that are happening in the game. One of the things that was definitely guaranteed to us was that we now know that the Norman Empire is a real thing. And also the French can turn into, or the Normans can become the French. We know that India is now, we have 3 different Indias for each age. We have Maurya India, which we already knew about, and then there's Chola India, and then Mughal India for the modern age. So we finally got the Mughals in a Civ game.
Nice. And I'm sure there's nothing disagreeable about just being continuous India. No one will complain.
They decided to use something, or they've decided to call their art style readable realism, which I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it's an interesting idea at least.
You can tell where there's hill
Okay.
forests and when there isn't hill forests.
Yeah.
I mean, if they do that, then I will accept their name. I won't let them copyright it, but if they want to call it that, and I can look at the map and tell what's going on easily, then yeah, sure.
We also learned that the settlement cap is not totally the same for all civs. For instance, we know that Rome and Mongolia both get an extra settlement cap.
Yeah, it's not surprising at all.
I mean, it's very appropriate for those two.
Yeah, and just like if you're gonna add a mechanic like that, then it makes sense to like have other things in the game interact with it beyond just like the one thing that lets you get more for like everyone. And yeah, I would expect eventually nations like England and such to get it as well.
Yeah, we already know that the Normans can also become England, so that's fun.
Yeah, you can go either way. And it makes sense historically.
Normans go west.
There
Turn into
was
Canada.
there is a belief, I don't know if it's been corroborated or not, but it is currently assumed that China will also have 3 different eras like India does, which would make sense considering that China had multiple different dynasties just like India did. So,
Pretty big as well.
and that was mostly the information we got from them. There was a lot of talk about how the developers feel about things, and that's not particularly useful when you're looking for information about a game that you haven't been able to see a whole lot of yet. But
Was there more new units or buildings or anything? Or
Code doesn't care about your feelings.
really, it doesn't.
Although sometimes it might evoke some.
Yes.
oh dear.
Rage! What? So when they showed the other Indias and with, well, it was only a mention of China, but in the other Indies, do we see any more? What the heck is? I'm going to call it the Renaissance era because I don't remember what the actual name is, but not modern era. But were there any more units or anything? Because I hadn't had a chance to watch them.
Exploration?
Thank you. I would like to rage in my own brain code. Thank you.
I didn't see any other than a few like potential unique units. I can quickly run through the Well of Souls dictionary here. It looks like we've got pikemen and some elephants exist. I'm not sure which kind. Knights are confirmed. Catapults, trebuchets, crossbows are in. Looks like some knights are there. We saw a hoplite, which suggests that Greece is a civ. Which, I mean, it would make a lot of sense for Greece to be there.
Yeah.
And I think
it'd be really odd to have hoplites without Greece. Yes.
Yeah. If I'm looking at the Well of Souls page, it looks like there are, excuse me, there are a few civs that we think exist. Chimera, because we saw a beret, and also Angkor Wat is in the game. We think the Chinese civs are going to be Han, Ming, and King, or Qing, depending on whether or not I actually know how to pronounce them.
Pronounce? I like it.
Thank you.
And then also mispronounce the word, and then when people complain, you put it in the to-do bin, which is just a trash can. I like it.
Oh my goodness.
We're gonna pronunciate you. I would like to know how to pronounce that though, because I always feel stupid when I'm like think about forming them in EU4, and I don't. Let's look that up now.
I'll do that for you. Sounds like Ching, according
It
to
is
Google.
Ching. Yeah. Okay.
I'll go with that.
I will call myself the king of Ching. Very good.
Shoot, I lost my train of thought. We got distracted by this pronunciation
that.
thing. I guess
But we
that's
did
all.
learn something.
Yeah.
We learned something that will carry forward into the future.
Yeah.
It is power.
For the next 30 minutes until my brain decides that's not relevant info again and forgets.
I think I'll remember this time.
The fact that you have to say
And I will keep thinking that until it's not true.
Let's move on to our next topic.
Okay, well, there's a dev live stream coming up, and that's on September 12th, which will probably be after this releases, or maybe not.
Let me check.
Pretty soon after, if it does.
It will be the day after this episode releases.
Okay.
Because
yeah, if you're listening to this and you haven't heard it yet, then yeah, go check it out.
we also got confirmation in that post that first looks are coming back as well.
Oh, okay. So we'll get some briefing on everybody and get to know more about them before we play. Get excited. It does say they're going to show the age transition into the exploration age. So that's the thing that people have had a lot of questions about the transition part.
Yeah, is it going to talk about the crisis or is it just the transition itself?
It says, well, the wording is what you can expect and what will carry over to exploration age. So I guess yes. Or at least partly
we don't really know.
Yeah. It's on their topic list, so.
Well, we'll probably know more once this is out.
I'm hoping to have this episode out on September 11th, so trying to actually keep up with releases now. Let's see, was there anything else in that thread that was mentioned? Like, I was very interested how she said, we'll also take time to answer some community questions, and then immediately the thread was filled with questions. Which, of course, one would expect for a rabid community very happy about getting a new game, but...
Yeah, they're going to have to pick and choose. They cannot answer all of these.
Right. So it will be September 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, and 7 p.m. Central European Standard Time. Oh, shoot. Mackie, can you do the topic that I forgot to put on the list, or do you want me to do it?
What that would require me to know what you didn't put on. Oh, is it the PAX Australia?
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking something was missing in here, but I didn't realize. But they're dude, now I have to scroll up to look at it myself. All right, there is going to be a Civ 7 developer panel at PAX Australia that is going to be on October 11th at 11 a.m. the local time. Somebody converted this.
Yeah.
Yes, 5 p.m. West Coast and 8 p.m. East Coast here in the U.S. and 2 a.m. Central European.
Or Europe.
Yes.
And it looks like we've got lead producer, senior art designer, Andrew Fredrickson and Jason Johnson. We've got senior lead environmental artist Matthew Quickle and lead unit artist John Fitzgerald.
Yes, slightly different lineup from what you've seen in other dev panels, so it might get some differing thoughts and opinions, hopefully.
There was an image somewhere.
Yeah, and the panel is titled Bringing Your Civ World to Life. So it's probably going to be a lot about how it's the art side of how they made things look the way they do and what their inspirations were. Because we've seen a little bit of that in the main trailer where they were talking about seeing those little, in a museum, those little setup things. It was like recreating that, you know.
The dioramas, yeah.
Thank you. What? I'm sorry, listeners. My brain is not doing good with words today.
It's okay. It's a Saturday. So we will look forward to that. That will be, if I look forward on our calendar here, that will be the day before the recording. No, because we're recording 2 weeks from today. So that will be on our record date. Our first record date after that will be October 19th, I believe.
Yeah, it's gonna fall in between the two, which is okay. Gives us all time to watch it.
Gives us some time to watch it and understand what's going on.
Yep.
And now for our last news topic, which proves to be controversial in everything that ever shows up. Civilization 7 has implemented Denuvo Anti-Tamper, and there is a significant amount of weeping and gnashing of teeth, and I don't really blame the people who were upset. But
Yeah, this thread is started by Dale, who's a very long time player. Been active in at least earlier Civ games, on the testing through. And
yeah, he's the guy who designed one of the in-house scenarios for Civ 4, actually, Road to War and Beyond the Sword.
yeah,
He also now works at Mohawk Games as a developer for Old World. So
yeah,
what?
that's right in his description.
Yeah, what has happened here is Civilization is implementing Denuvo Anti-Tamper, which, while it's not the anti-cheat, is still a problem because people have a problem with Denuvo slowing down performance and screwing things up.
Yeah, it's how it interacts with the people's problem is how it interacts with your system, regardless of which version it is. It can mess things up. People have gotten legitimately locked out of their own stuff before. Everybody's just like, no. And honestly, the game's going to get cracked. This is not going to slow them down that much in cracking the game and for piracy. All it is right now is ticking off people who want to buy the game.
Thankfully, this is not Denuvo Anti-Cheat, which is the one that runs the kernel hack. So at least it's not the absolute worst version, but it's still not consumer friendly at all, and it doesn't help. So I don't understand why they bother with this kind of thing.
Yeah, and somebody's pointed out elsewhere in the thread that 2K, even if it's being forced from 2K, they often remove that after the first 6 months. So this is what a lot of people saying. Well, if that's true, I'll just wait 6 months. But it does seem like it's not necessarily something Firaxis personally wanted to do. That it is one of those things that comes down from the bigger publisher thing that they have to do this. But
I can't see anyone at Firaxis thinking this was a good idea.
Yeah, because people, even with somebody in our own play group, canceled their pre-order because of this.
I think 2 of them did, actually.
Is it 2? Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's 2. Now that forgot.
It's a real shame.
Yeah, I had not pre-ordered yet, but even this made me hesitate. Because, like, do I really want to mess with this? Because I have so many other things that I've got, and I want to be playing with people the first week, but I don't know.
Yeah, this is pretty rough.
Thankfully, it's not the anti-cheat, because anti-cheat has a kernel hack and basically can do whatever it wants on your system no matter what. And there's nothing you can really do about it. This is the anti-tamper, which doesn't have the kernel hack. But still, it's like we are going to put a extra program on your computer that is not going to help us stop people from pirating it, but is going to make the people who weren't going to pirate it in the first place annoyed because it slows down the game and it causes issues with security. I don't understand why anyone would do this unless they literally did not care about their consumers, which as a business entity is a really bad idea, especially when your game lives on long-term players who are very in love with your franchise.
Yeah, we do hope that as many people, because we know people who canceled pre-orders, and there are plenty of people in this thread and other places saying, I've canceled my pre-order, or I'm going to wait 6 months to a year until this is out of there. We hope that gets up to the publishing level and they realize that this is harming them more than it's helping them. The people who are going to pirate it are still going to pirate it. They weren't going to pay anyway. This is just pissing off your end user base, and that's never a good thing, no matter what your product is.
Another downside of implementing something like this is that presumably the pirated version will probably not allow Denuvo to run the same way. It'll be really crummy if the pirated version winds up with better performance as a consequence of that. Like, at that point, you are punishing the people who are your actual customers / responsible, and the people who are stealing it are still going to steal it. It's a horrible business model.
The thing that confuses me is they put Denuvo on the game, but they also require a 2K account connection to play online. So presumably having a 2K account connection when you connect online means they could just check to see if you're playing a legitimate version when you connect to play multiplayer. And that would probably be enough to figure it out without needing extra software that just slows things down and makes people mad, right? Or am I confusing something here with good practice?
I don't know. I'm reading in the thread one of the posters talking about the games it's on to prevent piracy, and that you're probably playing games with it already. I haven't played any of these games.
I know. I looked at that
So-
list and I'm like, no, I haven't.
Which
Capcom, EA, no, not
They
for
said
many
it,
years.
and they said indie or indie adjacent things like Tavern Keeper, but I haven't played that one either.
Yeah, no. No Dragon's Dogma, Mortal Kombat. I haven't played since like the Super Nintendo days. I guess I briefly played in the PlayStation era at a friend's place, but like, no, not since like Denuvo has been possible.
And in this day and age, do I really trust that a corporation says, "Oh no, it just totally sits there and it's not going to spy on you"? No, I do not trust that.
Yeah, how many provable cases of the contrary do we need? And like, even if their intentions aren't bad, like they themselves can get hacked and
Exactly.
send crap to us via patch that's compromising. It's just an unnecessary vulnerability for putting something on our machines that's not favorable to the consumer whatsoever, and is arguably not favorable even to them. It's just bad. But a lot of companies do it, so they must be doing it based on some incentive, even if it's just a mistaken belief that it helps.
Well, if they remove it after 6 months, that's at least good in some level.
It's less bad.
Yeah.
But it'd be great if we were at launch and it wasn't there.
Their anti-consumer practice is for a limited time, as opposed to not doing the anti-consumer practice. Yeah,
Well,
yeah, kind of like getting like a scrape versus getting like a gash on your leg is favorable.
It still
You're
hurts.
it's still not great. You'd still rather not do it.
yes, but I'm trying to be positive.
The positive would be if they get enough pushback to not do that.
I agree.
Similar to like the Helldivers controversy thing.
That was just okay. For those who don't know, what he's referring to is when Helldivers, after being on PC and in every game or in every country around the world, decided that you needed a PSN network account to continue playing on PC, and removed it from all countries that didn't support the PlayStation Network, which resulted in one of the most massive review bombings in history, and also forced them to walk back that change. But the question always remains, why did Sony think that they were going to get away with that? Because it was a hugely popular game. It's not so popular anymore, mostly because of that. So
Yeah, I mean, there probably should have been serious legal consequences to Sony had they kept that and like implemented it. Because essentially, it's changing the nature of the product and the availability of the product to the people who bought it legitimately.
yeah.
And we're seeing some of that with creeping into business practices of various kinds, not just video games, but really anything. Do you own what you buy? It's becoming more and more of a relevant question, as companies can deny you access to something you purchased, and with often pretty predatory terms of service.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of angles to push back against this kind of stuff.
I'm depending on the EU to eventually say, hey, if you buy a license to the game, you get to pass it on to people when you die.
I wouldn't put much faith in EU or really any particular governmental entity.
Well, the EU
At least
did.
not any individual one. Like, we'll have to. It's something we have to like actually push politicians to.
Well, the EU and I believe Australia also did a very good job of getting Steam to finally start accepting refunds. So
Yeah,
it took them
I mean, it's not
forever to get
useless
it
to
done.
do it. I
but-
just like I wouldn't depend like just hope that they'll do something about it. They have to like actually pressure people specifically in enough numbers
Well,
that
yeah,
it's a
but
noticeable.
we have a podcast with a listenership of hundreds. That's not really that
Yeah.
big of a.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're more discussing theory here, but even so.
I say the EU specifically because the EU actually has done something about it in the past, as opposed to everywhere else, which just kind of doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. They've been. I mean, the EU's been pretty hit or miss in terms of their internet legislation, but you're right that they're just way more active in that regard, for better and for worse.
The good news is, if you are playing on Linux, Denuvo doesn't. It's not used on Linux, I believe. So if you just run on Linux, you don't even have to worry about it.
There you go. Boot into Linux to play Turncast.
Also, we should note that Midnight Suns, which is also a Denuvo release or a Denuvo game, or a Firaxis game with Denuvo was released in December of 2022, and they have not removed it yet. So maybe they won't remove it.
The fact that they'll sell the game on a platform that doesn't use it really cuts into the into any legitimate need to use it on Windows.
Yeah.
We're gonna stop piracy, but people who just like use this operating system don't even have to deal with this. Okay.
Alternately, just buy it on a console.
You mean my next upgrade is going to be to a console?
And hearing those two words together, console and upgrade, is I mean, consoles have always upgraded relative to other consoles, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they are computers, basically. But everything else about that package, just it's not attractive and hasn't been for ages. At least not to me. I know a lot of people still purchase consoles, and for the most part, they run their games fine. But playing something like Civ on a console is... As someone who actually uses the keyboard inputs decently, it would be frustrating to play on a console.
I think you can plug a keyboard into a PS5.
That's true, I guess. And then just use your PS5 in lieu of a computer. Like you literally just put it at your desk and have a monitor.
Step 1, find a PS5.
Or you put a desk near your TV or something. Yeah, you could do it. But you really are just using a computer at that point, and not a particularly high-powered one.
Hussein in the chat
game.
says Civ Gacha on my phone when, and I say never.
Oh my god.
Oh god. No. Oh god.
A former guest host on PolyCast, Hussein.
I mean, what would stop them from making a gacha system in Civ 7?
I would hope common sense.
$4.99 for 20 rolls to get these 5-star leaders.
I mean, they could do it with cosmetics or something. I'm not advocating that they do it, but I can picture how it could be done. Maybe you can even roll some horse armor in your gacha, and then your cavalry can have horse armor.
I'd rather go to the Shivering Isles.
That was much more fun.
Yeah.
I've actually been playing Starfield again, so...
I'm taking a break from the Stone Soup tournament for this.
Oh, is
My
that
gaming
why
life is on pause for another week and couple days here.
Is that why we haven't seen you in the last week?
Yeah. For me, it feels like a bad tournament, but I'm in the top 10 right now. But I broke my streak at 6. That makes it really hard to repeat last time's performance. It sucks, but whatever. It's not an easy game.
Anyway, back to Denuvo. It is what it is, and I'm not going to cancel my pre-order. I will continue to play the game because I've played other games with Denuvo and it doesn't slow down my computer. So I will still play it. I will still be able to report on Civ 7 if other people decide not to. But
yeah, it's still going on. The release isn't until February. There's enough time between now and then that if there is enough of a community outcry about it, they may reverse that, or they might limit the term that Denuvo is on there. So we just have to wait and see.
We all hope and pray for a good result.
Yeah.
Speaking of crisis events.
This one should be fun.
Crisis events and its potential for villainous AI leaders. Ark in the Black started a post over on Civ Fanatics, and he said, from what he's seen so far, those end-of-era crisis events, you're drawing some cards with negative effects, and that was so he's like, well, what if it had more impact? You're playing against Rome in the First Era, and their leader switches to Nero, which, man, he was bad for Rome. That's their crisis. It's kind of that's what they're getting for a crisis, almost. Or you were playing against Mongolia, and now they're not some nice person like Kublai who wants to build. No, we're back to Genghis, who's about to look at your empire and go, ooh, that's tasty. You can kind of guess what their idea for Germany is. I'm not going to mention that leader, but you can guess who they think Germany could turn into for the modern era. You play Russia against the Third Era, and their leader switches to Stalin or something. It's those last are kind of oof.
We've had Stalin in a Civ game previously.
Yeah, we've had Mao as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see either of them as particularly better than Germany's villainous leader.
I would argue
Yeah,
Stalin
that's-
was worse, but
I mean, it's hard to say because Stalin had more time to do his evil, and had Germany had that time, we might be looking at indeed a worse outcome still. That being said, all three of those are just horrible people.
Yeah, the
Just
first two
horrible.
with Nero and Khan seemed like relatively, and then those last two is like, that still feels a little too fresh in world history to be pulling off.
Yeah, well, with like Nero and Khan, like there weren't people who like experienced that in living memory, so it's
Yes.
a little bit like how bad was it for the people of the time? And there's also the question, like with Khan, how bad is it for the people in their own country versus how bad it is for people in other countries, which is an important distinction.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
To my
having-
knowledge, like Genghis Khan shouldn't really be the leader of like a dark time in Mongolian history, but he would very much be the leader of a dark time for like everybody
Hey,
surrounding Mongolia.
Yeah, you're next door to
as
Mongolia
Mongolia
and suddenly it
grows.
goes over to Genghis. You're in trouble.
Like he was very capable in contrast to Nero, and I would argue also the others listed here. But he I wouldn't call him a good person by any stretch, but he was way more competent and better at least his own country.
Yes, it would be like that's what happens if Mongolia is getting like a golden era. They're getting Genghis Khan, and you're sitting there and you're stuck with Nero because things went wrong in Rome.
Yeah. And this is also going to be tough for a good number of other countries where like picking the villainous leader, so to speak, is probably going to result in controversy.
Yes.
Who's America's villainous leader?
You can make an argument that Lincoln would be.
Yeah.
From a certain point.
And that
of
would
view.
be well, I mean, like not only did he oversee a very obviously bad period in US history, but he himself suspended habeas corpus during his term, which is among the most villainous acts any US president ever has done. And the only reason the other side wouldn't make it is because they weren't technically the US. But like that was a pretty dark period in US history, and his conduct was not great. So
Obligatory Kissinger in the chat.
yeah, I'm just saying, like you could make a case for that, but you could see how controversial that would be. I didn't even know about that because I wasn't taught that in school history until I did a Let's Play where I was playing as him, and someone pointed out that he did that. I was like, oh my god! Like once I started reading up on that aspect of his history, like a lot of people would just see Lincoln and like seeing him compared to Nero and be like, what the heck? And that's true. Like the degrees of bad are very different here. Like Nero, Stalin, and Lincoln, like these things are not like the others.
No.
For multiple
This is
reasons.
entirely different tiers of bad with all of them.
Yeah, like Nero's just like straight up incompetent. Stalin is horrible and incompetent, and like Lincoln just did something pretty ethically bad, but like wasn't fully incompetent across the board. Like these are very different, quote unquote, villainous leaders for multiple reasons. And I think that if you're extending this to like 18 plus different civilizations, that you're not going to be able to pick people who are comparably bad to each other or even close. So this would be a field day of controversy and anger, which I'm all for. I want to see it. It'd be funny, but I don't think Firaxis will do it for this reason.
No, and hopefully
Even though
we
I
have
like
that
the idea
upcoming,
personally.
and then the upcoming dev thing hopefully is going to clear up some of what the crisis actually is. So we know it's just not like his examples. You get 20% negative 20% income for the next 10 rounds. I don't think it's going to be as simple as that necessarily. I mean, there's some things I think in an earlier one that you were choosing your government and it was more simple like that as a bonus for however long, 10% or 15%.
I thought the idea was more to be along the lines of somebody that is unplayable, who is not a civ leader, is like the figurehead of whatever is attacking you. Like if there's a barbarian invasion at the end of the Antiquity era, you would have like an AI figurehead for that.
Oh,
That would go
be
well with
entertaining,
playing
too.
Rome.
Like it doesn't even have to be a real person. It could just be
Yeah.
like some like I guess you could do Attila the Hun, but he's actually like a real person. But like if it's just a generic NPC type character that would have no reason to, or would have no historical reason for anyone to want to play as them, because
Barbarian leaders are all Firaxis staff.
that would be hilarious. We get another Civ model or Sid model.
Oh, Sid.
Yeah.
The Sid Barians.
Yeah, he actually had a leader head in Civ 4.
Wasn't he also one of the advisors in Civ 3?
I don't remember.
I think he
was-
was.
I played Civ 3 so little.
He was the person in Civ 1 when he would do a research attack. That was Sid as a scientist with an appropriate toga and little laurel wreath back in the ancient era, and then a lab coat later on.
It never ceases to amaze me that, like from what I've seen of Sid, having met him once and also having read his book, he's a very humble person. And the reason he shows up in his games like this is because the developers are kind of like teasing him.
Yeah, it's your civilization game. Why aren't you in there, man?
Like, for the record, he is not the person who said it should be called Sid Meier's Civilization. That was a Microprose decision.
Yeah, true, but then it's lasted, so I can imagine some in-house teasing about that.
Yeah.
Man, why is it that EA had to last and not Microprose?
Microprose is back now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Even if you call it that, it's not like the same, but yeah.
Well, they've
EA
actually...
did that by eating. Well, EA survived by eating smaller companies. That's how.
Yeah, and at some point they changed. Yeah, because EA wasn't that bad back then, really. They made some good games. They made some games you wouldn't think to associate with EA back then, too.
Yeah, but some of the ones were also because they bought the smaller companies, they were published under EA instead, and then they cannibalized their staff and everything else, and da da da. It happened to so many companies that were from the 90s. Don't get me started.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if EA's leadership had been less evil / villainous, LOL,
Evil
that could have
acquisitions
gone
and
better.
corporate-
Like they could have just like bought those IPs, been more hands off, not ruined the games, and they'd be like remembered more fondly.
More fondly, they
keeping
would be
studios alive.
rolling in cash. But no,
Yeah.
no, they couldn't leave it alone.
I mean, I guess there's selection pressure for every big company to go south because we see it like across the board. Nobody's immune to this conduct. Like maybe they're a little worse / better than Activision or Epic or whatever, but like they all seem to wind up in about the same place ultimately.
But yeah, Microprose is back and is making new games again. So
Is that like the same people or
it's the same name. It's not the same people.
oh, it's basically a different company then?
Well, it's definitely a different company, but it's not. It's the same idea. Like they published High Fleet, if you've ever heard of that game.
No.
High Fleet is that game where you are a what do you call it? It's like a diesel punk future where you're flying around devastated Russia trying to overthrow the government, and you can fire nukes, and if you do, you get destroyed basically. It's a
But using
shipbuilder
nukes
type
is
game.
fun. How can you put nukes in a game and then expect me to not use nukes?
We even have a nuke in the trailer. Come on, they know we want to use nukes.
Well, we're not millennia. We're not charging DLC money for nukes.
That was kind of Guys, you have seen enough other strategy type games. You know how much players like to make big boom. Why you not leave in big boom? Well, I hope one of the crises in the modern era, near the end game, isn't having to avoid a big boom scenario. That would be on point.
It would probably be the most likely thing I could think of, other than like a huge pandemic or like an economic collapse type thing.
Ooh, 2008 all over again. Oh yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I don't think nuclear war would work because like you would have to force a war state into you'd have to force war as a game state.
Well,
Might not make any sense.
I'm thinking more like terrorists steal nukes and then they threaten to set them off everywhere type thing.
Man, you would do it. It would be a reach in plausibility, but you could do it. Whereas like mass diseases or some shortage of resource or stuff like that.
Climate change.
Yeah, those are a little more plausible. It would be hard to emulate a rogue state type of a situation that far into the game.
Yeah.
I think.
And to the extent that it's like a legitimate threat to every civ in the world. Whereas like some of the others that we've mentioned, just they fit. And you could use, ultimately the game could implement all of them if they wanted. I like the resource shortage one because it's not like, it's somewhat of an issue in our world, but in a different game world where resources are distributed differently, you could hit shortages much sooner or much more emphatically to the point where it causes a serious issue. Like imagine if we just like ran out of oil in 5 years or less on Earth. Like that would be a serious problem.
Yeah.
And
Too many
like
things depend on oil and other petroleum products.
in the game world, there might really be that much less oil. So like you got to
You
deal with that
could.
somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about modern crisis before, but yeah, that's some things that could happen because we've seen it in real life. Not that so it's not about realism, but they want to tether it to the real world at least, so it's somewhat believable and you get invested in it. I don't
Yeah,
think an
it's
in-game
like
crisis is going to be an alien showing up.
it's a gamified model of reality that's like highly abstracted, also for gameplay purposes. But you don't want to like they don't like put things in the game in the main game at least generally that are like completely impossible or just fantasy or whatever.
Hussein says that we'd all have to buy Teslas.
The
Oh.
problem is like a lot of the logistics that go into producing and shipping those don't rely on oil,
Requires oil transportation.
as does the electricity in a lot of the companies or countries in question.
Yeah. Do we simultaneously also run out of coal? Because then we're really in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know to what extent you could go with that, where it would like not just shut everything down, but it is an example of something that would absolutely cause a crisis. And man,
Yes.
coal sucks. You can use it, but yeah, I think that's still the highest, like per unit of energy, like that the most people die producing coal as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, because you kind of have to dig it out of the ground, and that's not particularly healthy.
Yeah, or safe.
And then when you burn it, it's also not particularly healthy as much as they filter it or attempt to filter it or allegedly filter it.
Well, they do filter it, but it's difficult to cost practically filter it sufficiently for it not to be damaging. But it would be worse, to be fair, if they didn't make the attempt. It would be even more pollutive.
The problem with
there's
coal,
not a lot of good things about coal as a solution.
the problem with coal is not that the West doesn't filter it; it's that other people don't, and it affects everybody. So
Well, even filtered, it's still not great. It's just less
No.
bad.
it's just less bad.
Like you do not want that as a long-term strategy, especially because the people that have to get it, yeah, they suffer.
Yeah. Sith Lurker in the chat reminds us that the only way to run out of anything is if it's not priced correctly, which is technically true. But we've never had a situation, I think, in human history where we've actually 100% run out of something to the point where you just can't get it no matter how much money you have.
I wasn't going in the details of economics here, but like when I say run out, I don't mean like literally there are no drops of oil left in the world. I mean that they're just so scarce now that it is not price competitive to use it in like almost anything because it costs so much that like you absolutely have to find some other solution to operate at a profit still.
And Christopher Rutherford immediately puts me to shame by saying dodo meat, which it's true that no longer exists anywhere.
Buffalo almost didn't exist because they got hunted down so much. Yeah, we've definitely done that to various animal species over the years.
Passenger pigeon eggs.
Yeah,
See, there are unobtainables.
To the point with by Sith Lurker, it's true that with oil you would not like run literally out before it would cause a serious crisis. Yeah, but you would have such an insufficient supply of it that it would be functionally run out for a lot of industries. You just wouldn't be able to get enough of it. Or at least you wouldn't be able to afford enough of it.
I'm going to double check the Well of Souls page to see if there's anything we haven't already talked about that has been announced since the last time we met for this show.
Yeah, I mean, we just need to make solar panels as good as they are in Emerald. It'd be amazing.
Oh, they're ridiculous.
That would be
A lot of
great.
games, solar panels are ridiculous.
Batteries too, for that matter. If we could have batteries as good as they are in Rimworld, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's like technically I could get solar panels on this house, but what is that going to help me if I can't retain the extra energy via battery?
Well, it goes back into the power grid, and if you produce enough energy, they will pay you for it.
I know, but when it comes to another crisis, like when we had that nice little winter storm that shut so much stuff down, kind of nice to have the backup energy. Because at least
like,
after
if the grid isn't running and you still want power, then it would in fact be helpful to have a battery that is sufficiently capable of storing to handle when you're not generating electricity from your solar panels or whatever.
Just enough to run the fridge and keep the pipes from freezing. That's it. Doesn't have to be crazy.
Sith Lurker says, I like the idea of a game having a good model of the economy. I would like that idea, but I don't think you can do that in a game that's 4X style game because
Yeah,
Because anything turn-based is going to have that snowball thing happen.
your unit of measure for most of the game is multiple years.
you would need a game that's more like capitalism or something like that, where the whole point of the game is running an economic simulation.
Plus, you would need developers who have enough knowledge.
Oh,
to do it.
what was the one that was? I stand corrected. There was a game that Stardock put out. I want to say Ashes of the Singularity. No, Off-World Trading Company.
The Ashes Singularity is RTS.
Yeah. Well, Ashes of the Singularity or Off-World Trading Company. Off-World Trading Company is a game that basically lets you simulate a market while also being on a map. So
Yeah, although I mean, I guess how correctly is correctly for this request.
also developed by
It's
Mohawk
like
Games.
our economy runs in real time for Earth, whereas whatever you're doing in the game doesn't. It's going to run much more quickly, and there are multiple things going on there that you would then, by necessity, have to abstract. And that abstraction is going to be imperfect, especially if you're porting this into a game world that's not our world, because you have to make assumptions about things basically off screen.
And
So
smart
like,
people
you can get it way more correct than Civ represents it, because Civ abstracts out of necessity way more. But yeah, there's a degree of correct here.
and some people who are super
Oh,
smart
just to
on
make
it will
sense.
figure
Yeah, then I agree.
we'll figure out how to manipulate that. We'll figure out the model of the game, the model of the economy that the game is using, and then learn how to manipulate it. You know, and then they'll have to do balance patches and all sorts of things for it. You don't get balance patches in real life, at least not often.
There are some that would say that government laws are patches, but I don't think that's true.
Well, patches can do negative things.
Well, yeah.
It's a very odd framing, though.
Yeah, it's weird. But yeah, Off-World Trading Company, developed by Mohawk Games, who we talked about earlier, designed by Soren Johnson, who did Civ 4, and is published by Stardock, which is also a company that is closely related to Civ. So, you know, made by people who do all the same stuff we do. Yes, Drew saying patches can do negative things like kicking you down holes.
It's not always negative. It's what they do, my friend.
Should we?
Oh yeah, you lose whales as a resource when you discover oil. Yeah, Sith Larker points out.
Yeah, that was one of those like what? No, people didn't stop. People still kept using whale oil for years. People still did whale bone things. They did not spontaneously disappear.
I mean, the overlap in usage between whale oil and actual oil is making one obsolete the other is a little odd. Just a baseline.
Well, that was before the idea of the World Congress banning resources.
Yeah.
Which is silly. That doesn't work in real life. Ban stuff all the time. Other places still sell it.
Well,
It depends. Yeah, you would need like an enforcement arm of the World Congress. I was about to say World Conquest, but I mean, yeah, kind of.
That would be an
Because
enforcement arm, yes.
If you had the capability to compel policy actions in every nation in the world to the point where they literally can't produce this resource any longer, yeah, you kind of have. It's
yeah.
not too far off, actually.
I think we've gotten a little off topic here.
Yeah, but
This
it's
is the
fun.
best kind of podcast.
Yeah, we've scooted out of the crisis. events
Yeah,
to high level, yes.
to our IRL crisis stuff. Whoopsies.
This has been episode 440 of the Venerable PolyCast. I'm CanusAlbinus, and this week we have Makahlua.
I'm getting a creative crisis in my coffee supply.
Uh-oh. And TheMeInTeam.
Back to crawling, where hopefully I avoid said crises.
Oh no. I'm looking forward to our next EU4 Let's Play.
Hopefully it happens.
Maybe we can get some people to join it with us.
Yeah.
We
I'll
actually
also
have
try to
live
remember how to
listeners.
play.
Woo!
You don't remember how to play EU4?
Yeah, I'll have to remember again. Forgotten how to play.
Well, it'll have to at least wait until after I've moved.
I mean, I say that half joking, because, like, a lot of the stuff, like, nearly everything with EU4 I remember, but there's, like, little details that are important to, like, doing a little better
Yeah,
that I do forget, and then I remember again when I play.
Yeah, we would need to practice beforehand.
Oh yeah. Before I do Let's Play, I'd always practice.
Civilization 3, 4, 5, 6, Beyond Earth, and 7 sound clips, copyright Take-Two Interactive. Copyright the Polycast at thepolycast.net.